Hello, everyone. Tonight we are standing in the shadow of domes and incense, in the city where the streets hiss with sandalwood smoke, and the marble glints just enough to distract you from the smell. This is Constantinople, jewel of Justinian's empire, and yes, something is coming. You're a baker's apprentice, sort of. The man who took you in mostly needs someone to carry sacks of flour and pretend not to hear his nightly arguments with the oven. But today, the air outside smells thick and foreign. You squint down at the docks where a new ship from Egypt is unloading. One of the sailors collapses. Nobody rushes. It's not the first time someone's hit the ground in this sweltering spring heat. You brush flour from your robe and push into the crowd because why not? The city's always been a boiling stew of voices, colors, spices, and shouting about taxes. Every other alley hums with life. Women hang dyed cloth from balconies like prayer flags. Children scurry past with figs in their mouths, and eunuchs in feathered hats scold each other over lost paperwork. It's busy and exhausting. The baker throws you a coin to buy more sesame. You nod and wander into the square where an old woman is muttering about bad omens. She points at the sky clear blue. Her fingers shake. Do you hear the bells, she asks? You don't, which is weird. So before you get comfortable, please take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you really like what I do here. And let me know where you're listening from. What time is it in your corner of the world? Now turn off the lights, maybe turn on the fan for some soothing noise, and let's embark on tonight's journey together. You wander past the statue of Constantine, nose chipped shadow long. You like this part of the city. The wind here smells like olives and stone, but there's tension under the surface today. Barely anything. Just a pause in conversation when you walk by a child clinging to a mother's robes, a pigeon flapping away too fast. Back at the bakery, the master is sweating harder than the oven. He wipes his face, mumbles about taxes again, then mutters, "Did you hear? The Egyptians brought something in their grain." It's always the grain. It's never just the taxes. You don't know it yet, but you're standing on the edge of the first pandemic in recorded history, the one historians later name after the emperor himself, the plague of Justinian. And you might not survive it. Not that you're thinking about pandemics yet. You're thinking about the neighbor who hasn't opened her shutters. You're thinking about how the harbor smells more like fish guts than usual. And the pigeons. Where are the pigeons? A priest rushes by with a censer swinging smoke like a weapon. Behind him, another man mumbles prayers to saints you've never heard of. You overhear someone say the word pestis. You don't know Latin, but you know that word now. You pass a public bathhouse and hear someone vomiting. You speed up. By evening, the city feels tighter, narrower. You help the baker close up early. He gives you a heel of bread and sends you home muttering about incense prices and how even the clergy are sweating. Your home is a shared room above a candlemaker's workshop. Your neighbor snores like a donkey. You lie in bed staring at the cracked ceiling, wondering why everything feels like it's waiting to break. Somewhere outside, someone screams. A short, wet sound, then silence. You wake up to bells, but not the usual kind. These ones are slow, funereal. You dress without thinking and make your way outside, following the sound. In the main plaza, a small crowd gathers round a cart of bodies. Someone's arranging them gently, almost lovingly. A child stares blankly from beneath a shawl. You recognize one of the faces. That man bought sesame from you yesterday. The baker doesn't open, neither does the butcher. A priest rings a handbell and mutters Latin. Another ship arrives in the harbor. No one greets it. You spend the day drifting. The city is beautiful but hollow. Everyone's home. The baths are closed. The fountains have stopped. You walk to the hippodrome, where the horses used to race, and find it empty, except for a cat licking itself on the emperor's marble seat. There's a sense now something creeping beneath your skin. Not fear exactly, just the awareness of being watched by something you can't see. Historians still debate whether the plague arrived first in Pelusium or Alexandria. Some say it came with Egyptian rats on grain ships. Others point to overland routes through Syria. But that debate won't save you now. That night you dream of smoke and water. The city is flooded, and the Hagia Sophia bell tolls underwater like a drowning angel. You wake up coughing. Dust, you tell yourself. Just dust. Outside, the bells are still ringing. The cough is small at first. You barely notice it, just a sailor hunched over on a crate near the docks, spitting into the sea. You've seen worse. You've been worse. But what gets your attention is how everyone else moves away. Fast. Like he's glowing. The next morning, he's dead. There's no ceremony. Just two dock hands awkwardly rolling him into a fishing net and swinging him into a cart full of straw. The cart wobbles. The straw's not clean. You back away without meaning to your feet, finding their own path. That sailor came from Egypt. Everyone knows that. One of the grain ships from Pelusium stacked with millet and dried fruit and maybe something invisible. The kind of something that makes your gums ache just thinking about it. You're not alone in noticing. An entire crowd has formed at the docks, but unlike a festival crowd, there's no laughing, no music. Just silence, broken by the occasional cough. And not all of them are coming from the same person anymore. The baker doesn't want to talk about it. People get sick, he says flatly, tossing you a rag. Sweep the back. You do, but you pause when you see a beetle on its back, twitching like it's choking on the air. That's new. Or maybe you're just looking harder now. A man bursts into the square late in the afternoon, his robe askew, and shouts that the grain is cursed. The devil's in the wheat, he screams. He eats your lungs. People laugh nervously, but they still pull their hoods tighter. You do too. That night it rains. Hard. The storm floods the gutters and turns the alleys into slow-moving rivers. You crouch by your window and watch a rat struggle across the water soaked to the bone, fur slicked flat. You've never pitied a rat before. By morning, the baker is coughing. He tries to hide it, clears his throat, mutters something about the cold, but you hear it, the rasp. You fetch more firewood than usual. He waves you off, pretending not to shiver. By noon, he sits down in the flour bin and doesn't get up for a long time. You don't know what to do, so you keep working. You roll the dough. You tend the fire. You keep the shop open, but no one comes in. You sweep again more than you need to. The bristles of the broom scrape against the stone in an oddly soothing rhythm. You whisper numbers under your breath, 1, 2, 3, just to feel something orderly. In the evening, a woman staggers by with a bundle in her arms. It's a child, not moving. Her feet are bare, and she doesn't seem to notice when she steps on broken tile. She stops in front of the bakery, looks in, and says, "They won't take her." You don't know what she means. She says it again. "They won't take her." You don't move. She stands there for a moment longer, then keeps walking. Later, you learn she meant the undertakers. By the next day, the baker can't get out of bed. You bring him broth, but he won't touch it. His eyes look yellow in the firelight. His left armpit is swollen angrily so, like it might burst. You turn away. Historians still debate exactly how fast it spread. Some claim it took months, others say days. But in Constantinople, it feels like the city got sick overnight. You sleep at the bakery now in the flour room. You think it's safe, even though you know it's not. A priest stops by with a sprig of hyssop and sprinkles water on the door. You don't let him in. He doesn't ask. You start to hear stories, wild ones, that the emperor himself is praying in secret chambers, that Theodora has a mask of pure gold and wears it all day to keep the plague out, that the infected smell like almonds, that cats are spreading it, that cats can see it. The baker dies on a Wednesday. You find him at dawn, still his arms crossed, as if he'd folded them deliberately, though you know he couldn't lift them yesterday. His body is hot, but he is cold. You don't scream, you don't cry. You just open the door and wait for someone to tell you what happens next. No one does. You bury him yourself in the small garden behind the shop. You don't say anything. You don't know any prayers. You just sit there for a while after and think about the way he used to hum while kneading dough and how he never learned your name. You sleep that night with your head on a sack of barley. You dream that your skin is peeling off in sheets, that you have no mouth, that the sky is burning and no one notices. You wake to silence and then coughing. Not yours. Someone in the alley, maybe two someones. You decide not to go outside. The next day, the door to the bakery stays shut. You stay inside, eat stale bread, listen. More coughing. Always more coughing. But it's the stillness that gets you. The space between the sounds. Constantinople was never still. Even at night, there were cats, carts late, drunks, midnight prayers. But now it feels like the city is holding its breath and has been for hours. You start talking to yourself just to hear a voice. In the distance, the bells begin to ring again. Not for worship, for death. They ring long and slow, and they keep ringing. It starts with a pinch, right under your arm. A little tenderness. Not pain exactly, just enough to make you pause while pulling on your tunic. You touch the spot. Warm, maybe a bit swollen. You stare at your fingers like they're going to answer you. You tell yourself it's nothing. You've been lifting flour sacks. Your muscles are sore. You've been sleeping on grain. You're fine. Outside, the bread line stretches from the closed bakery all the way to the old bathhouse, where people no longer bathe. They just sit. Some of them don't stand back up. You walk past them slowly, holding your breath in places that smell particularly wrong. There's a new kind of rot in the air, sweet and coppery, like honey that's been left too long in the sun. You head toward the forum, hoping someone's still selling figs. There isn't. The market's barely a whisper of what it was. Empty tables, abandoned baskets. One man is trying to sell clay pots filled with ashes, swearing they're smoke-washed against evil spirits. You don't buy any, but you stare too long. He shouts after you. You'll wish you had. On your way back, you pass the church of St. Mokios. There's a priest out front. He's shaking incense so hard it looks like he's trying to drive off wolves. Inside the pews are full not of worshippers, but of pale, limp bodies wrapped in linen. Some of them still move. You don't go inside. There's a line of carts along the main street, all headed the same way. You follow them. The smell is unbearable, but you've stopped reacting to it. They're headed to the so-called Death Tower's giant pits ringed with lime and prayer. You help unload one cart because the driver can't lift anymore. He just sits and stares at his hands. You lift the body. It's light, lighter than it should be. It makes no sound. You feel the pinch in your armpit again. That night you can't sleep. You sit near the bread oven even though there's no fire. It's the warmest place left. You peel back your sleeve and look again. The swelling's bigger. There's a purple tint now. You press it. Mistake. You scream so loud you startle yourself. Your voice sounds strange, like it doesn't belong to you anymore. You press a cloth to the lump and rock back and forth, whispering nonsense. You think about your mother. Her hands smelled like thyme. You haven't thought about her in years. Historians still debate whether the bubo, that hideous oozing lump, was the result of the Yersinia pestis bacteria entering through a flea bite or through the lungs. Some even argue it came from cursed air, but none of that matters when it's your armpit that looks like it wants to explode. You pace, you mutter, you pray even though you're not sure to whom. At dawn, you wrap yourself in a wool cloak and walk to the riverbank. You sit on a rock and dip your hand in the water, hoping the chill will take the heat away from the swelling. It doesn't. You stay anyway, watching the mist rise from the water. A single white heron lands nearby, looks at you like it knows, then flaps away. You try not to cry. A man in a hood approaches. He looks like a doctor, but with none of the confidence. His mask isn't even leather, just soaked linen tied around his face. He offers you a ball of dried herbs and tells you to chew it. You do. It tastes like moldy fennel. I was a bookseller, he says suddenly. Before all this, you nod. He looks at your armpit, winces, and mutters 3 days. Until what? Until the fever takes you, or you get better. That's a lovely binary. You go back to the bakery and lie down in the flour again. It's soft, familiar. You stare at the beams above your head and think about how many people touched them before you, how many left behind skin sweat stories. You wonder what those stories were. You wonder if they were ever this quiet. The fever arrives on the second day. It creeps in like fog. Your skin feels like it's made of hot wax. Your head pulses like it's full of drum beats. You see things that aren't there. Once you see the baker alive and smiling, asking if you remembered the salt. Another time, you see Theodora standing at the foot of your pallet wearing a crown made of beetles. You laugh or cry, you're not sure which. On the third day, the fever breaks, or tries to. You wake up soaked in sweat, your tunic clinging to your ribs like a second skin. You peel it off, groaning, and look at your arm. The swelling has stopped growing. It's still there, ugly, bruised, but less angry. You stumble outside. The street is empty. You hobble to the fountain and drink like a beast. Maybe you'll live. Maybe. You walk through the quarter slower now. The bodies are being burned in the square. No more burials, just fire. The priests have stopped chanting. The birds have stopped coming. One man sits at a table, playing a lyre with no strings. You sit next to him. He doesn't look at you, just nods once and plays his silence. You'd think the emperor would be above all this. You imagined golden walls, crystal goblets, maybe a wall of perfume to keep out the plague stink. And yet even behind the marble of the great palace, Justinian can't keep it out. You hear the rumors whispered everywhere, under cloaks over empty loaves muttered through linen masks. The emperor is sick. You don't believe it at first. Or maybe you don't want to. He was supposed to be untouchable, chosen by God, crowned with incense and fire. If he can't stay clean, what hope do you have? Still, curiosity gnaws at you, so you make your way uphill toward the Chaka gate just to feel closer to the center of things. The square is quieter than usual. The guards are still posted, but their armor looks unpolished. One of them leans heavily on his spear, another coughs. Through the wrought iron gates, you spot something you never expected to see. Empress Theodora in a window staring out at the empty square. She isn't veiled, and she isn't pretending to smile. Her face looks drawn more stone than woman, and her fingers tap the windowsill like she's counting days. People still talk about Theodora like she's half magic. A former actress, a master of charm, someone who once gave a speech so powerful it stopped a riot. You never saw that speech, but you believe it. You also believe she hasn't slept in days. Inside the palace, panic is soft, well-dressed, and silent. Eunuchs shuffle in pairs. Scrolls go unread. No one raises their voice. Everyone has that haunted look, the one you saw in the bakery mirror before the fever broke. You learn that Justinian has taken to his bed. Some say he has the fever. Others say it's just precaution. Either way, the empire isn't running like it used to. You overhear a scribe muttering, "The silk shipments are late again," like it's the end of the world. Maybe it is. If not silk, then what? Historians still debate how bad Justinian's condition truly was. Some say he came within hours of death. Others claim he simply faked an illness to avoid pressure from the Senate. Either way, things changed. For a while, no decrees were issued, no new laws, no proclamations in the square. You meanwhile go days without speaking to anyone. Your bubo finally shrinks to a hard knot under the skin like a cursed almond tucked into your ribs. You try not to touch it. It pulses sometimes like it remembers. You've started working again, not baking, just helping to dig. Everyone who can lift a shovel now does. You follow the carts, unload the bodies, scrape away the flies. The pay is small, but no one argues anymore. One day, a nobleman's corpse is rolled off the cart. He's wearing rings. You take one pocketed, then feel shame heat your face. But no one stops you. Another man took his shoes. Another cut the lining from his robe. You stare at the ring all night, then bury it behind the bakery. It doesn't feel like yours. And still Justinian lingers. Theodora, they say, has taken charge. She addresses the Senate in his name. She orders more lime for the plague pits. She commissions icons to be painted of Saint Michael defeating a serpent. You see one such icon, still wet, hanging from a wall near the chapel. The archangel's eyes are huge, filled with pity, or rage, or both. You stand before it for a long time. Another rumor says Theodora won't let Justinian's physicians leave his room. They eat there, sleep there, pray there. One man tried to leave and was found a day later with his tongue cut out. You don't believe that one, but you want to. One night, a procession moves through the street outside your window. No music, just torches. The flames reflect off gold-threaded robes and bald heads. Monks, priests, bishops, carrying a reliquary. Something ancient rumored to hold a bone fragment of St. John. The procession moves slow, humming as it goes. You fall asleep to the sound, and for once, dreamless. The next morning, the bells ring again brighter, crisper. People are whispering, "He's recovered. Justinian is alive." You step outside into the pale sunlight, unsure how to feel. He lived. Good. But also, what now? The city doesn't erupt in joy. It just exhales. Slowly. The fires still burn. The carts still roll. But there's something different in the air, like maybe hope, or at least resignation. A group of scribes begins nailing new proclamations to the walls. Tax updates, trade agreements, a call for workers to rebuild the aqueducts. Business as usual, apparently. The empire grinds back to life, creaky and irritable. You find a bench and sit. You rub your palm along the wood, feeling the splinters. You think about the baker, the sailor, the woman with the child. You wonder if Justinian thought about them too, or if power means you get to skip that part. You look up at the palace again. Theodora isn't in the window anymore. The pigeons are starting to come back. You smell it before you see it. Something like boiled fat and old wine, thick in the back of your throat. Then the wind shifts, and there it is. The Death Tower, tall, wide, unholy. A stack of flesh and linen pressed into the sky like the bones of a forgotten god. You helped dig one of these. This one you just stand and stare at. There aren't enough diggers anymore. So now they're building vertically layering corpses like bricks. A priest stands at the base, swinging incense like a pendulum, his chant hoarse and automatic. You doubt he remembers the words. Someone nudges you from behind. Move. More coming. You shuffle aside and watch as two carts creak forward. One of the drivers is a woman. Her face is blank, but her hands shake as she lifts the bundle from the cart. You catch a glimpse of a child's foot, blue and stiff. She turns away before it's fully unwrapped. There's no ceremony, no names, just stacking. Back when the plague started, the gravediggers were proud in a way. They spoke of duty, of dignity, of Roman strength. But now they're silent, worn. Some are missing fingers. One sings to himself under his breath as he tosses a body upward. The olives fall, the olives fall. You walk away before your stomach turns. Back in the city proper, you find the plaza near the cisterns has been turned into a temporary burial zone. Not even proper pits, just layers of lime and dirt and cloth. Some of the cloths are still moving. You help a man unload another body. Where from, you ask? He shrugs. I stopped asking. You nod. Later that afternoon, you hear someone laughing. It's not joyful, more like broken glass. You turn the corner and see a boy not older than 12, spinning in circles, arms stretched, repeating, all gone, all gone, all gone, until he collapses. A woman gathers him up and whispers into his ear. He doesn't respond. You don't go near them. You don't go near anyone, really. A week ago, you would have gone to the baths to feel clean. But the baths are closed, and the last time someone tried to sneak into one, they came out with more than sweat on their brow. So you just scrub yourself with old cloth and rainwater, hoping it's enough. It isn't. The infection never left the city. It just slowed down, like it's waiting. You learn to walk with a scarf over your face now, not because you think it works, but because it gives people a reason not to talk to you. Everyone wears something now. Herbs around their neck, gloves, charms, even garlic, which doesn't help, but makes you smell aggressive enough that no one stands too close. You keep seeing the same old man sitting on the steps of the Hagia Sophia, clutching a wooden cross. He never moves. You're not even sure if he eats. You pass him 3 days in a row and think he's dead until he blinks. On the 4th day, he's gone. Historians still debate how many died in Constantinople alone. Some say 100,000. Others claim half the city. One chronicler swore it was over 300,000, though everyone assumes he was guessing by the smell. No one's counting anymore, they're too busy stacking. You're pulled into a cart detail by a red-eyed officer. You look healthy, he lies. You spend 3 days helping clear the artisan quarter. You see a painter with dried pigment still on his hands. A tailor surrounded by buttons. A man curled up beside a scroll as if reading when the fever took him. You stop noticing the faces. At one point, your arm brushes against an open mouth. You don't flinch, you just wash later with vinegar and whisper a prayer you don't believe. The man with the vinegar says we're running out. Of what? He stares. Everything. One evening, as the sun dips behind the towers, you find a child sitting in the shadow of the bakery. He doesn't speak, just watches you. You give him a piece of hard bread and nod. He stays, sleeps against the wall. In the morning, he's gone, bread untouched. That day, the priest outside St. Mokio's collapses mid-blessing. No one picks him up. The towers are full now. They start building new ones wider this time. Some say it's better to burn, but there's not enough wood. Not anymore. The emperor is said to be issuing rewards to anyone who recovers and returns to work. You're not sure what kind of reward he means. Coins bread. Not dying again. You visit the bakery one more time, just to remember. You kneel where the oven used to burn and touch the warm brick. It smells faintly of ash. You whisper the baker's name. You say yours too. You haven't spoken it aloud in weeks. Then you stand up, stretch your arms, and walk back into the street. And behind you the wind carries a strange sound. Shovels still working. They keep blaming the rats. Small, scrabbling, oily-furred things that dart beneath carts and under steps, fleeing the sun like little thieves. You've seen a dozen today alone. One ran across your foot. You didn't scream. You didn't even flinch. You've learned not to flinch. The story is that the rats brought fleas. The fleas bit people. The bites brought death. A simple chain of misery, one link after another. It's neat, blamable. You like that even if it's wrong. Because, and this is the part that really rattles historians, still debate whether the rats were truly at fault. Some say the fleas jumped from camel fur to humans. Others think the grain shipments were cursed from the start. A few whisper about poisoned air rising from the Nile, carried on invisible wings. But the rats make an easy enemy. You're watching one now, its tail curled under its belly, its fur mangy. It doesn't look sick, just tired. Like you, the man beside you hurls a rock at it, misses, spits. Should burn every one of them, he growls. They'll outlive us all, you mutter. He doesn't hear you. You move on. The grain warehouses near the docks have become battlegrounds. Not just for rats, but for people too. Food is scarce. Most shipments have stopped. No one wants to trade with a dying city. Even the Black Sea routes are quiet sails, missing from the horizon, like teeth from a drunk's grin. The guards at the granaries no longer wear uniforms, just sticks, and the will to hit with them. You try to barter with a man outside the harbor storehouse. You have nothing of value, but you offer to lift sacks, sweep floors, anything. He looks at your eyes too long before shaking his head. You've got plague breath. It's not a medical term, but it's enough. You leave. By midday, the sun is sharp, glaring off copper rooftops and still water. Constantinople always shimmered like a coin, but now it's the shimmer of fever. You wander to the old hippodrome. You haven't been here in weeks. Once it held races and riots and prayers. Now it's mostly pigeons. You sit in the shade of the imperial box pretending you're someone else. Someone with power. Someone who doesn't smell like vinegar and smoke. You nap. You dream of the Nile boats with striped sails and golden cats with human eyes. You're back in Alexandria just for a moment. Years ago, you traveled south to find work. Alexandria was hot, fragrant, full of scholars and drunks. You worked in a spice stall and fell in love with the sound of Coptic chants at dawn. One night, a woman read your palm under a pomegranate tree. You will not die of violence, she said, but you will live with death for a long, long time. At the time, it sounded poetic. Now you'd like a refund. When you wake, the sky is darker. Smoke again, not clouds. Somewhere nearby, a tower collapsed. You can smell the burned linen. A boy passes by carrying a basket. Inside frogs. He's selling them, claims they keep the plague away. You almost laugh. Almost. You give him a copper coin anyway. You spend the evening near the aqueduct. There are fountains here still running, though barely. The water tastes like metal. You wash your hands 3 times staring at your reflection in the pool. You've lost weight, color, part of yourself. Your eyes look farther away now, like they're already planning to leave. A woman near you spits into the fountain. She's crying. She says something about her husband. He was just sick yesterday. He said he'd feel better tomorrow. He promised. She says it again and again, like a prayer or a curse. You leave her alone. Back near the docks, you hear shouting. Someone spotted a rat. No surprise. But this time, the crowd forms fast, too fast. A man grabs a broom, swings. A woman throws a jar. Someone sets a torch to the crates behind the vermin. The fire spreads. People scream. You back away watching wood turn to smoke and smoke to flame. A rat runs out of the fire, its back aflame like some demonic omen. A child points. That's it, he says. That's the one. As if it started all of this. The crowd cheers when it finally dies. You don't. You return home late, clothes singed, hands shaking. You pass the bakery and pause. The air smells like old wheat and ash. You think about writing something on the wall. Something to mark that you lived, that you're still here, that you watched it all and remembered. But you don't. What's the point? Instead, you pick up a piece of charcoal and draw a rat on the stone. Not cartoonish, not demonic, just tired. Like you, it comes to you in a dream Alexandria, not the fever-drenched hallucinations of saints and screaming goats, but the real Alexandria, brilliant and hot, glittering like a copper basin in the sun. You remember the buzz of the streets, the press of sandals on stone, the smell of ink and spices blending into the sea breeze. You're walking again among the scroll sellers. Someone is shouting about stars. Someone else about taxes. You pass a familiar face. Yes, that astrologer from the pomegranate grove. She calls out, not with her voice, but with her eyes. You follow. She leads you down an alley of broken columns, and at the end waits a boat made of gold reeds. You step inside. It sinks. You wake up with your face stuck to a wooden beam. It's still Constantinople, still the same ruined, sweating city. But the memory of Alexandria clings to your thoughts like wet cloth. You can't shake it. You keep replaying her words. You will live with death a long, long time. You were young then. You didn't understand. Now everything makes sense and none of it helps. You sit up, joints crackling like old papyrus, and step outside. A pale sun drips through a veil of smoke. The streets are quieter now, not from fear, but from simple numbers. There are fewer people to make noise. Everywhere you look, there's absence. You pass a square where a potter used to sing as he worked. His wheel is still there. A jug sits mid-spin, half-fired. You reach out to touch it and stop. A smear of dried blood marks the rim. You leave it alone. You walk to the harbor. The water smells worse than usual. Rotting fish, dead birds, the sweet stale scent of decay. There's a single ship in the bay, sails lowered, crew absent. It rocks lazily, as if pretending to be asleep. You imagine climbing aboard, sailing away. You even take a step toward the docks. Then the wind shifts. You see black cloth hanging from the mast. Plague ship. No escape. You turn back. On the way home, you pass the old astrologer's quarter, where the mosaics used to shimmer. Most of them are smashed now. Someone's drawn chalk circles on the walls, protective symbols maybe, or desperate ones. You see your name written in Greek letters under one. Not your name exactly, but close enough to feel cold. You meet a man who says he remembers you from Alexandria. He smells like olive oil and sadness. You were the one with the laugh, he says. The boy who climbed on crates and shouted about cinnamon. You say nothing. He gives you a pear shriveled and soft and disappears down the alley. Later that day, you sit under a fig tree. It's the only green thing you've seen in days. You imagine the fruit ripening. You imagine a future where someone sits here and doesn't know what happened, where the word plague is something dusty and distant. You hope they sit here and feel safe, but you don't. That night, the stars return. Clear sky, no clouds, just brilliant pinpricks of indifference. You lie on your back in the garden behind the bakery and watch them shimmer. You try to name the constellations, but your mouth won't move. Not out of fear, just fatigue. A dog howls somewhere. You hear no reply. In the distance, the Hagia Sophia's dome glows faintly in moonlight. It looks hollow, like someone scooped out the center and left the shell behind. Historians still debate whether the plague of Justinian truly marked the end of the classical world. Some say it was a turning point, a slow bleed of empires and ideas. Others argue the world was already crumbling and the plague just added a final shove. But you're not a historian. You're just someone who made it through another day, and that's starting to feel like enough. You see shadows in the street, people moving again. Not many, but some. A woman with a cart of onions, a boy carrying clay bowls, a priest with no shoes. Life slinking back in without permission. You whisper Alexandria under your breath like a spell. You dream of her again that night. The boat floats this time, and you don't sink. When they say Justinian is sick again, you don't react. You're sitting on a broken column near the old city wall, peeling a fig with your fingernail. The news comes from a boy barefoot, sharp-eyed, running like it still matters. The emperor's caught the black wind again, he yells. Someone nearby spits. Someone else groans, he just got better. You finish the fig, sweet overripe, too soft. Back then, when Justinian first fell ill, it felt like the world might tip over. Now it's more of a shrug. You've lived with this long enough that even the emperor getting sick again feels routine. Comforting almost. Like the return of a song you hate, but know every word to. This time, the palace doesn't deny it. No proclamations, no golden sermons, just silence. You wander toward the great palace out of habit, not hope. The guards are thinner now. You recognize one he used to chase boys away from the fountain. Today, he's leaning on his spear like it's a crutch, skin gray as wet parchment. You nod. He doesn't nod back. No one knows how Justinian caught it again. Maybe he never stopped being sick. Maybe the plague never left his blood, just simmered quietly, waiting for a weak day. You wonder if it's the same for you, because the lump under your arm, it's back. Not as bad, not as hot, but there, present, a quiet drumbeat. You sit on the steps of the old mint and prod it. It's tender, but it doesn't throb with death like before. Maybe this is what surviving looks like. A lifetime of suspicious aches. You start seeing faces from earlier in the plague survivors like you. They move differently now, more carefully, like people who've walked across a collapsing bridge and aren't sure the other side is stable. One of them is the woman from the bread line, the one whose child no one would take. She passes you without meeting your eyes, but you both nod. There's a kind of communion in that. By now, half the city has either died, fled, or turned into a different version of themselves. The churches are quieter, the market chants are muted. Even the birds have forgotten their songs. But something odd begins to happen. People start painting. It begins with chalk lines on walls, protective runes, saints' initials, nonsense charms. Then actual color, blues and reds. Someone draws an enormous figure on the wall outside the tax office, St. Michael, but with a rat pierced on his spear. You laugh when you see it. Really laugh. First time in weeks. Later, someone strings linen between ruined buildings and paints prayers on the cloth, hundreds of them fluttering like sails. You help a boy hang one. His hands are stained indigo. What's yours, say you ask. He smiles. It says, my brother is not forgotten. You want to write something too, but the words won't come. Instead, you draw a hand reaching up. Open. Nothing else. The next day, more show up. A whole street of art. Faces, flowers, rats with halos. A city trying to remember how to be human. Historians still debate how Justinian's second illness affected his policies. Some claim it made him more pious. Others think he became obsessed with legacy commissioning endless churches, statues, scrolls. You don't know about all that. What you know is this one morning, the bells ring not for mourning, but for Mass. You walk to the Hagia Sophia just to see. The doors are open, candles lit, a few dozen people inside. Masks still on, heads bowed. It's quiet, not funereal, just solemn, steady. You sit near the back. The light from the dome shines like soft honey across the floor. You don't pray, you just breathe. When the priest speaks, his voice is raspy, but kind. He says, we survived. That is not nothing. You feel something shift inside your chest. That night, the fever doesn't come. The lump doesn't swell. The sky is clear. You lie on the bakery roof, the bricks warm under your back, and stare at the stars. No visions, no burning saints, just stars. You count them until your eyes blur. You think about the word again, how heavy it is. Sick again, dying again, but also breathing again, walking again, sleeping again. That one's the hardest. You roll onto your side, tuck your hand under your head and wait. It doesn't come quickly, but it does come. Sleep. You don't go to the funeral expecting anything. It's for a neighbor you didn't know. Well, a candlemaker, quite the kind of man who nodded politely, but never loaned you a wick. His wife leaves a basket of jasmine on the steps of the chapel, and you see her hands shake as she tucks the final sprig inside. There's no procession, no incense, no hymns, just 10 people spread wide apart, and a man reading from a book with most of its pages gone. The candles on the altar are stubs. The air smells of sweat and mildew and old prayers. You stand at the back. No one cries. It's not that people are too cold. It's just that tears have become a luxury. You only cry when there's energy left, and energy is expensive now. When the final words are muttered, the mourners step back, and two young men in patched robes lift the body into a cart with three others already inside. The wheels squeal as they roll away. No one follows. You stay behind. Someone has etched a line into the chapel wall we remember even if no one else does. You stare at it for a long time. Then you go home. By now, your room above the bakery feels like a relic dusted with flower shadows and silence. You clean it. Not because it's dirty, just to remind yourself that something can still be cleaned. Outside, the city has shifted again. The plague isn't gone. It still takes people, still coughs in alleyways, still lurks beneath the tongue, but it's slower. It moves differently, cautious, or maybe people have just stopped giving it room to grow. You walk to the harbor and watch ships come in. They don't dock, not yet, but they hover in the distance, white sails trembling like hands, unsure whether to knock on a door. People are building again, not fast, not in grand gestures, but slowly, carefully. You see scaffolding on the aqueduct, a new tile roof, someone painting shutters blue. There's a sound you haven't heard in months, a hammer, not on a coffin, on a wall. Even the pigeons have returned, fat and loud and unbothered. One lands near you and blinks like it owns the city. You don't shoo it. You pass the square where the first grain ships unloaded, the same spot where the sailor coughed and the baker cursed and the world began to crumble. Now it's full of baskets. Fruit mostly. Some herbs. An old man selling lizards. You don't ask why. In the corner, a woman reads aloud from a scroll. She's missing half her teeth, but her voice is strong. You pause to listen. It's poetry. Something about stars and water and waiting for dawn. You don't understand all the words, but it doesn't matter. It's her voice that makes you stay. Historians still debate how the survivors coped. Some say religion surged. Others point to superstition, to madness, to escapism. Some even claim laughter returned first, that people began joking about the plague while it still lingered in their bones. You believe that. You hear it now. Someone snorts near the onion stall after a terrible pun. Another chuckles. You spot two kids chasing each other with sticks, pretending to be plague-eating demons. One shouts, "You've been rat-bitten. Pay the cheese tax." You laugh, out loud, to your own surprise. You remember the boy who told you once that you had a good laugh. In Alexandria. Or maybe it was a dream. You remember the figs, the palm reader, the gold boat, so much remembering now. You find a scrap of papyrus and draw the boat again. You don't know why. It just feels right. That night you return to the chapel, not for a funeral this time, but for a kind of gathering. A few people sit inside each with a candle. They don't talk, just sit together in the glow. You join them. You light your candle. You stare at the flame and feel something shift, soft and visible deep. Not healing, just loosening. When you leave, you pass the death towers. They're still there, but the top layer has been covered in lime. No new bodies today. The wind stirs the dust gently, almost kindly. You stand for a moment, bow your head, not for the plague, but for yourself. Then you walk home. On the way, you whisper something you haven't said in a while. Tomorrow. They say 15,000 died in one day. That's what the grain counter at the dock tells you anyway, between bites of a bruised apple and zero emotion. 15,000. That was the peak, he says. Couldn't bury him fast enough, so they started tossing him into the sea. He shrugs. Fishes gotta eat. You nod, because what else is there to say? It could have been 5,000 or 50. No one kept real numbers, not when scribes were dying faster than ink could dry. You remember counting bodies for a week and then giving up. You just started naming them in your head. The woman in green, the man with no shoes, the boy with the necklace of bone. Now when people talk numbers, you listen politely and think of smells instead. That was the week of sour linen. That was the month the sky stayed yellow. That was the day the rats started eating each other. You walk through the city with a limp now, not from plague, just from a misstep in the rubble weeks ago. A cracked tile, a loose brick. It healed wrong, and now you walk like someone older than you are. No one notices. Everyone limps now. You pass a mural on the wall of the baths, St. Thecla, holding back a tide of rats with her bare hands. It's new. You smile at the absurdity and at how beautiful the rats are, painted with care almost lovingly. Even the monsters are art now. Someone's placed a bouquet at the base of the mural, wild herbs and wheat, a tribute or an apology. The trade routes are starting to stir again. Grain shipments trickle in. Silk merchants whisper about reopening shops. You hear the word Byzantine more often now, as if the empire is trying on a new name after a long, sick dream. But the truth is everything's smaller now. The caravans that come in are half empty. The spices are dull. The maps feel lonelier. You stand at the edge of the old marketplace and feel it shrink around you. You think of it like lungs after fever. They still work, just not as wide. The baker's oven has cooled completely. You go inside sometimes just to sit. The flour has turned to chalk. You run your fingers through it and draw spirals on the floor. One for each month, the city coughed itself half dead. You meet a girl there one afternoon, maybe 10 years old. She watches you draw and says, "That's a snail." "It's a wind," you say. "It looks like a snail." You shrug. "Maybe it's both." She visits again the next day, brings you a pine cone. You don't ask why. Later you find a pouch of beans hanging from your door. Someone's idea of charity, or maybe tribute. You cook them over a slow fire and cry because they taste like before. Historians still debate whether Justinian's death toll matched his ambitions. He wanted an empire the size of Rome, but what he got was a thinned-out map and towers of lime. Still he lived, recovered, ruled for another decade, as if the plague had only pressed pause. Some call it resilience, others call it denial. You're not sure it's either. One day you stand by the sea and watch a dolphin break the surface. People gather. A child screams in delight. Someone tosses a crust of bread into the waves. The dolphin doesn't eat it, it just watches. You think maybe it's remembering something too. Back at the forum, you overhear someone tell a story. There was a man who buried his whole family, then stood outside the bathhouse and sang for 3 days straight. They laugh. Not cruelly, just in that way people do when something is too sharp to touch directly. You remember him. His voice cracked by day 2. By day 3, he was humming. By day 4, he was gone. But the story lives. You write it down on a scrap of parchment and pin it to the bakery wall. The girl with the pine cone reads it. "He should have sung louder," she says. You laugh. A man with a scar across his eye starts offering lessons in the square. How to build a fire without kindling. How to tell real silver from fake. How to sharpen a knife on limestone. It's popular. People bring food to trade for stories. You trade nothing. You just sit and listen. That night, you light a candle and leave it by your window. It flickers once, then holds. You don't know who it's for. Maybe everyone, maybe just you. The city feels hollow. Not ruined, no, you've seen ruined. But echoing like someone scraped out its insides with a golden spoon and forgot to fill it back in. You walk the streets and hear your own footsteps louder than you should. Even the bells ring softer now, as if unsure they're still needed. Trade hasn't returned, not really. The ships dock with caution. The merchants wear masks not out of fear anymore, but out of habit. You watch a spice dealer unwrap a bundle of cinnamon like it's a sacred relic. He offers you a sniff. You inhale, and for a moment you're 12 years old again in Alexandria, watching shadows flicker against the ceiling of a spice stall. But the memory doesn't hold. It crumbles like a scroll too long in the sun. A boy near the docks asks if the demons are still in the wind. You tell him no, but your voice cracks a little. He doesn't believe you. No one knows how many cities the plague touched. Antioch, Carthage, Rome, places whispered now like warnings. Trade routes once tangled and busy are quiet and bare. You hear rumors of entire villages emptied overnight. Ships adrift, crewless sails stiff with salt and silence. You try to imagine the world shrinking bit by bit. Fewer faces, fewer footsteps. You wonder what mapmakers will do with all the blank space. One afternoon you pass through the silk quarter. Once it sang with color, bolts of crimson threads of gold, the hiss of scissors on fine cloth. Now the looms are still. You peek inside one workshop and find a woman asleep beside her spindle. She doesn't stir when you walk past. Outside, someone has written on the wall, "We are still here." It's not a threat, just a reminder. You stop carrying a knife. Not because it's safe, but because you're tired of expecting the worst. When danger comes now, it wears familiar clothes. Sickness, silence, grief with your name in its mouth. You begin to notice the ghosts. Not real ones, though, who can say, but the kind that live in the corner of your vision. A man selling dates, though the stand is empty. A child's laugh from a balcony long abandoned. A cough in the quiet that sounds like someone you buried. You learn to nod to them, respectfully, like neighbors. Historians still debate how trade survived. Some believe in imperial resilience, how Justinian forced the empire forward with decrees and gold. Others say it was the people bakers, scribes, weavers, the ones who remembered how to wait. You lean toward the second group. You start keeping a journal. It's nothing grand, just small observations. The doves returned today. The olive man smiled. I had a dream of figs. You write them in charcoal on scraps of linen, then pin them to the bakery wall. Others start adding their own. A whole patchwork grows. One note reads, "My mother sang me awake today. She's been gone for a month." You don't touch that one, just nod. One morning you find a fisherman with nets full of bones. "Not fish," he says plainly. You offer him vinegar. He pours it over his hands like a ritual, then throws it into the sea. You help him clean the net anyway. That evening you sit on a roof and watch the city blink under the last sun of the day. It's still there, broken breathing and unsure. Like a person after fever, you feel it inhale around you. At night, the streets are quieter than ever, not with fear, just with rest. Even the rats walk softer. You lie in bed and listen, not for danger, but for life. Somewhere, someone is playing a flute, a bad one, off key, beautiful. You close your eyes and let it play you to sleep. You hadn't planned to buy a potion made of boiled lizard tongues, but when the man with the crooked staff and the voice like crumbling parchment insisted it would ward off the belly demons, you handed over a coin just to make him stop talking. Now it sits on your shelf, brown glass, wrapped in string filled with something that looks like stew gone wrong. You've started collecting odd cures, not because you believe in them, but because they make people smile. You've got the lizard tongue, vial a wax tablet etched with a saint, sneezing on a skeleton, a dried bat wing, and a jar labeled clouds from the west. It's empty. The new holy men don't care for the joke. They've taken to preaching in the streets, voices cracking like firewood, offering salvation in exchange for silver and obedience. You pass one outside the bathhouse, ruins wrapped in white linen, his eyes wild with sincerity. The plague is a test, he shouts. Only the pure shall breathe freely again. You glance down at your own breath, still working. You must be impure then. Others gather around him. Some kneel, some toss coins. One woman throws a sandal. You keep walking. Later, you visit the herbalist. She doesn't speak, never has, but her eyes do. You sit while she wraps a paste of honey and thyme for a man who claims he can taste colors since the plague. He points at the ceiling. This one's green. She ignores him, hands you a bundle of dried rosemary, and raises an eyebrow. For cooking, you ask. She shakes her head, then points at your chest. For remembering, maybe. Historians still debate whether medicine during the Justinian plague made any difference. Some records describe poultices made from crushed emeralds or powders ground from mummy dust. One Greek manuscript even recommends bathing in vinegar while singing psalms backward. You try that last one for fun. You feel no holier, just wet and embarrassed. And yet people keep trying. You pass a family painting white crosses on their doorway. You see women burying hair under fig trees. Someone claims pigeons can smell the sickness and suggests wearing feathers. A boy shows you his plague-proof amulet. It's a walnut tied with horsehair. You ask, does it work? He grins. I'm still here. You can't argue with that. The Empress Theodora, they say, has commissioned new churches. Frescoes, icons, a saint with golden wings and a lion's face. The empire wants miracles, now something more trustworthy than medicine or monks. You don't mind. People need stories to keep breathing. You tell one yourself one afternoon to a small crowd gathered near the baker's old oven. You're not even sure why something about the sailor, the first cough, the pigeons that vanished. You didn't plan it. The words just spilled out. They laugh when you mention the rat with flaming fur. Someone adds, I saw that one too. You don't believe them, but it doesn't matter. They ask for another story. You offer one about a fever dream, a city underwater saints with kelp robes and a goat who spoke Latin. They laugh again, loudly. You realize it's the first time you've heard group laughter in months. You bring out your plague cure collection. Each object gets a gasp, a groan, or a giggle. You hold up the empty jar of clouds and say, careful, this one's very powerful. Someone offers to trade a drawing of a healing fish for the rat skull you found last week. You accept. That night you hang the fish drawing on your wall. The lump under your arm is long gone. Your breath is steady. But you know it could return it, meaning the plague, the fever, the silence, everything. But for now, you have a fish on your wall, a rosemary bundle by the door, and a memory of people laughing. The next day, someone leaves a new object on your step, a tiny carved figure made of olive wood, shaped like a person hugging a rat. No name, no message. You add it to your shelf. The potion of boiled tongues still hasn't moved, but you smile every time you see it. The quiet is the first thing you notice, not the eerie, brittle hush of early plague days, when dread clung to the corners like soot. This is a deeper silence, emptier, heavier, more complete. You wake up to it. No bells, no footsteps, no pots clanging in kitchens, no pigeons scratching on the roof. Just air. You sit up slowly listening. Nothing. The streets outside feel as though they've been wrapped in wool. You step outside barefoot, careful. The stone is cool under your feet. The wind doesn't move. At the corner, the old fig seller's cart is still there, fruit untouched. A cat naps in the shade. You whisper its name just to say something. It doesn't stir. The fig seller's not there. His hat is though resting neatly on the cart handle. You check 3 more streets, all empty. No carts, no children, no sermon shouters or onion hawkers. Just a stillness so complete, it makes your own breath feel impolite. You wonder, is this the end? Did you miss something? Maybe the world left and forgot to tell you. You go to the fountain near the bakery. The water still runs, but it sounds louder than it should, like it's falling into an abyss instead of a basin. You dip your hand in and hold your breath. You think of all the voices that used to echo here. The man who recited Homer at noon. The boy who sold bad poetry. The woman who sang while scrubbing clothes, always off-key. Where are they now? Eventually, you find someone, an old woman, sweeping the steps of the church, her broom scratching the stone like a whisper. She doesn't look up when you speak. Just says rest day. You frown. For who? She shrugs. Everyone, I guess. You want to ask more, but don't. Instead, you sit on the steps and watch the sky. It's clear. Not a single cloud. The sun floats like a quiet guest. You nap. You dream of color. In your dream, the city is awake again, fully joyfully. Silk banners snap in the breeze. Bread smells fill the air. Music, dancers, laughter. The ghosts of the plague rise and twirl in gold and purple robes before vanishing into the blue. You wake to a bell, one bell, small, hesitant, from the Hagia Sophia. You follow the sound barefoot still. The door is open. Inside, a few figures sit, scattered in the pews, heads bowed, hands folded. No one speaks. The light through the dome paints everything in gold and blue. You take a seat near the back. A child sneezes. No one panics. No one runs. It passes like a ripple. The priest, one you've never seen, walks forward and doesn't preach. He just stands. After a long silence, he says, "You're still here." And somehow, that's enough. Historians still debate how many times the plague returned. They say it came in waves decades apart, cruel reminders. Some claim it never really left, just changed masks. But the survivors, you know that what matters isn't how often it came back. It's that you did too. After the service, people trickle into the square. A child draws circles in the dust. A merchant sets up a single table. A woman begins sweeping the stones, not because they're dirty, but because it feels good to do something. You walk the long way home, just to feel the city. There are windows open again. Not many, but enough. You pause outside the bakery. The stone feels warmer now. You lean against it, close your eyes, and breathe in. Somewhere nearby, a dove coos. You smile. It's not over, but it's beginning again. The stories come back first. They return in pieces, like pottery glued together by memory, and exaggeration. You hear them in the square at the fountain, under shaded archways, where people now gather not to mourn, but to compare truths. There's the one about the woman who cured her entire street with garlic soup, the baker who faked death to avoid taxes, the boy who married a ghost, then woke up healed. None of them make sense. All of them are sacred now. You find yourself telling stories too, simple ones at first. Where you were when the first sailor coughed, what the pigeons did when the bells stopped, the smell of the flower room when the baker died. People listen, not for facts, but for company. They need your voice the way the city once needed bread. The boy with the walnut amulet finds you in the square and gives you a new one, a pebble with the letter Y scratched into it. What does it mean, you ask? He shrugs. Whatever you want. You carry it in your pocket. You start sleeping better. Not deeply, not yet, but the kind of sleep that wraps around you gently instead of dragging you down like a sack of rocks. The nightmares fade. Fewer goats speaking Latin, fewer burning towers, more figs, more blue sky, and one night in your sleep you dream of laughter. When you wake, it's real. There's a group outside the bakery. They've built a makeshift table and are playing a dice game. Someone spills a drink. Someone else sings terribly. You lean out the window and say, it's not even noon. A woman looks up and grins. Exactly. The game continues. The next morning, a man sets up a cloth stall outside the bathhouse ruins. He doesn't say anything, just sits beside bolts of fabric and watches people walk by. You approach and run your fingers along a length of deep green linen. It feels like moss. You haven't touched anything so soft in months. How much, you ask? He smiles. For you, a story. You trade him the one about the rats and the painted saint. He gives you enough cloth to make a tunic. That afternoon, you finally throw out the potion of boiled lizard tongues. You bury it actually beside the bakery wall. The pine cone, the carved rat, and the walnut amulet stay on the shelf. The jar labeled Clouds from the West gets pride of place. Historians still debate whether this phase, this quiet after the storm, was the beginning of a cultural rebirth or just a pause before more disaster. Some argue it marked a new kind of citizen, one shaped by suffering, more cautious, more resourceful, harder to kill. You don't argue either way. You just keep waking up. You meet the girl who once brought you the pine cone. She's older now, or maybe just taller. She asks if you're writing the story down. Which one, you ask? All of it. You nod. You start with the cough, the sailor, the baker, the lump under your arm. You write slowly, your handwriting stubborn and uneven. You don't care. Every day brings more visitors to the square. A musician with a one-stringed lyre, a painter recreating faces from memory, someone reciting riddles. One riddle makes you laugh so hard you drop your new tunic in the dust, and then unexpectedly Justinian rides through. He's older now, grayer, but alive. You don't cheer, neither does anyone else. Instead, people bow their heads, not in reverence, but recognition. He looks like he's seen ghosts. So do you. The emperor speaks briefly at the Hagia Sophia. No threats, no laws, just a short sentence. We begin again. You don't clap, but when the bells ring after he leaves, you notice they sound brighter. Or maybe your ears have finally cleared. That evening, you light 3 candles, one for the baker, one for the boy with the feather amulet, one for yourself. You stare at them until the wax pools and whisper each of your names. The bakery will never reopen, but the room upstairs is clean. The walls are full of drawings, now boats, stars, strange plants, goats, and crowns. It's not a home. It's something better, a place you chose to stay. It doesn't return the same way. When the plague flares again, it's quieter. No wild coughing at the docks, no towers of bodies, no priests chanting themselves hoarse, just one name missing at the fountain. Then another, a neighbor who doesn't open her shutters, a baker's assistant who leaves the bread too long in the oven and never returns to take it out. You feel it before you hear it, the weight in the air, the way people walk faster, speak softer, the way they watch each other out of the corners of their eyes. But you don't panic, you don't pack, you don't pray louder. You've already done all that. Instead, you move slower. You know how to wait now. You walk the city like someone tending a fragile fire. You offer figs to the children. You sweep the step even when it's clean. You help patch the cracked mosaic of a saint who lost his face to time and birds. When someone coughs, you ask if they want tea. When they don't answer, you stay anyway. The streets are thinner than they were last week, but not dead. You find yourself telling stories again, not just the old ones, but new ones too. You tell the one about the girl who fed the rats and lived to paint their portraits. You tell the one about the man who swore singing to water made it safe. You tell your own twisted, humble strange. People listen, even when their eyes are tired, even when their sleeves are damp. The pine cone still sits on your shelf. You turn it sometimes just to feel its weight. You think of the girl who gave it to you and how last you heard she was helping build a new bakery on the North Hill. Not this bakery, that one is done, but its ghost still lives in your walls. You hear it at night when the wind moves just right, soft flower laughter, the crackle of old wood, the hiss of a loaf being pulled from flame. It's not haunting, it's remembering. Historians still debate whether the plague ever truly ended or just became part of life. Some say the empire limped forward, dragging its corpse behind it like a wedding train. Others say it adapted like moss and found new ways to breathe. You think both are true. You're older now, not ancient, but older. You don't run, you walk. You watch the children carve new saints into the brick walls, smiling ones. Saints with flowers for hands and sandals too big. You see people setting out bread without names attached. You see a man playing a two-stringed lyre under a fig tree and a goat listening like it understands every note. You're not healed, but you're not dying either. That night you lie in bed and listen not for coughing or bells, but for the tiny, almost missed sounds. The shuffle of sandals, the sigh of a candle. A woman somewhere is singing about rivers and fire. You close your eyes, and this time you dream of nothing, just dark, soft, safe. You sleep deeply for the first time in years. Somehow, through the burning breath of plague and silence, through sour linens and boiling potions, through missing faces and endless bells, you made it. You weren't the hero. You didn't discover the cure. You didn't hold the empire together with wisdom and faith. You just survived. You learned to recognize the sound of empty streets. You learned the scent of fear the way it clings to cloth. You named your ghosts and let them sit beside you. You saw a city fall into sickness and rise not in triumph, but in stubbornness. You watched as people remembered how to smile, how to speak again, how to light a candle not for the dead, but for dinner. You learned that laughter sometimes comes back before the pigeons do. You carried plague in your blood, and it didn't carry you away. Now the air is warmer, the bells ring softer, the saints wear painted flowers, the bakery is quiet, but the walls hold stories. And you, weary witness, walk lighter, not because the world is healed, but because you are still here to feel it. So rest now. Let the stories drift from your skin. Let the ghosts hum you a lullaby. The city is quieter now, not from absence, but peace. You can sleep. It's safe. You're home.